Welcome to episode 9 of The Leap Home. Play it again, Seymour.
In this week's episode, Sam leaps into a private detective in 1953 who discovers his partner has been murdered and finds himself next on the list. When he realises he has reciprocated romantic feelings for the deceased's widow, it makes matters more complicated and pushes his relationship with Al to breaking point. But can he solve the case and mend his friendship? Or will the killer catch up with him first?
You dirty rat. You dirty, rotten rat.
No, Sam.
You killed my brother.
Sam, that's Cagney, not Bogle.
Good evening, Ian. How are we?
Not too bad, Gerry. How are you?
Feeling a bit of a dirty rat.
It's good to be back after an unscheduled and unnoticed break.
Yes, however, we should say probably at this point, there will be a noticed break.
Oh, right after this.
Yeah. How long are we taking?
At least 6 weeks.
No, we won't do 6 weeks. We'll try for maybe 3 weeks.
3 to 6 weeks.
Three weeks off. We've explained this before, but the reason is that we have to have a bank of episodes recorded behind us to allow for illness and holidays and all that type of thing, and we've used them all up again.
Well, we're at the end of the season as well, which is quite a convenient stopping point.
It's the obvious point to take a little rest.
It's not a rest for us, we'll keep recording.
No, we will, exactly. So we've got to keep recording so that there isn't... So we're going to take a break to ensure there's no breaks.
Indeed. And all of you who have fallen a few episodes behind will be pleased that you're able to catch up, although by the time you're listening to this, you've caught up. This was your sort of story this week.
Loved it. Favourite episode of this season. I'm not saying it's the best, but for me, ticks all the boxes. A private eye, murder, mystery. Yeah, I love all that.
Good. I should say, before we get into it, that we remain available on social media at Leap Home Podcast on Instagram and Twitter. Also at The Leap Home on Facebook, and also the website at theleaphome.com. And as usual, a reminder that next week's episode, although not on this occasion, should now be available on YouTube 1 week early, every week, on schedule. The YouTube channel is called Columbo Podcast Productions, if you can't find it, and there'll be a channel there for our Quantum Leap episodes.
A playlist.
Indeed, that's exactly what it is. Please like it, whatever video you come across, subscribe to the channel, hit the wee bell, and you'll be notified whenever the new ones come out.
What else? What other playlists are on there?
All of our previous shows, well, by the time you hear this, we'll be into the Sledgecast run. So
right.
Everything else that we've done, Blackadder, Faulty, Jonathan Creek, Star Trek, Columbo, are already up there.
All the TV reviews we've done.
Indeed. And in terms of reviews, if you could take a wee moment to give us 5 stars wherever you can, whether it's your own podcast listening app or even better on the Apple Podcasts app, because it's the most visible place. That would be very much appreciated.
Or even better on the old YouTube thumbs up, smash the like button, subscribe button.
Do all these things. Just take a minute. I think we gave you a minute at the start of last week's episode. So
how do you give the thumbs up on Snapchat? How does that work?
It doesn't. Snapchat's a very ephemeral sort of
it's very
platform.
No, I think it's quite a macho.
You've picked that up completely wrong on purpose.
Okay.
I don't find it amusing.
Anyway,
this is that one. You're still hammering this and waiting for someone to laugh.
I told you, it becomes so unfunny that it becomes funny.
It's almost ubiquitous now.
What is it somebody said, when you're in hell you keep going or something like that?
Do they?
I don't know. I think it was meant to be Churchill or something.
I'm
not generally one for quoting him, but
a big Churchill fan there.
No. Anyway,
shall we get into Quantum Leap?
Let's crack on.
It's a different type of opening this week to what we've seen.
Remind me, it's actually a few weeks since I watched it.
Okay, so Sam reflects very specifically on last week's episode, calling it a good day, where he won the race, stopped the bad guy, kissed the girl, and we get the clips from the end of the episode.
Yeah, that's the time where we see him kiss the child.
Yeah, and then he balances that with the bad days when you appear in someone's life with a gun in your hand and a dead body on the floor.
Yeah, he is in an office, standing over a bullet-riddled body of holding a gun, and things get worse when 2 cops burst in as he tries to explain that he didn't do it, but he's literally got the smoking gun.
Indeed. So they arrest him, take his gun, and there's a reference made to the Dodgers game which confuses him.
So 2 things from that. First, we understand that the cops know who he is.
Yeah, they name him, don't they?
Yes.
They call him by his first name.
And I'm sure you've got some trivia about it, because as far as I know, the Dodgers are from LA.
Well, that's what Sam thinks. But in 1953, they hadn't yet moved to LA. They were playing in Brooklyn. They were the Brooklyn Dodgers.
Right.
It's a bit like the New York Giants baseball team. They also, both those teams moved to the West Coast and became the LA Dodgers and the San Francisco Giants.
Who's the San Francisco? Oh, in baseball.
In baseball,
Sorry,
right.
Who, and the Dodgers. Who would be the famous Mickey Mantle? Was he from the Dodgers? No, obviously the.
I'm not even sure who the famous Dodgers players. I mean, it's more of a famous name than us. The Yankees would still have been the biggest team in New York, and that's probably why these other teams moved out, because they were so dominant. Makes
sense. We should start a baseball podcast where you teach me, because you're one of the internet's foremost experts on America's game, and you could teach me about all the bases. Ian, you could give me a
America's pastime.
I don't know. Yeah, what's second base again?
I think that's something that Terry Hatcher explained in the second.
Right.
I don't know.
Anyway, Sam, he mumbles that he is still in LA, but the cops think he's losing it, as one of them takes him out of the office, whilst the other calls the coroner from a phone beside the New York Daily Press, which reveals it is
1953.
What date?
I didn't write that down. Just to wind you up, I thought I'm just going to leave it out.
April 14th.
I actually did write that down.
Okay.
We then get almost like the Star Trek format, which we've talked about so often, credits.
Yeah.
After this sort of cold open,
which
is a first, I think.
Is it?
Quantum Leap, unless you include recaps as cold opens, which I don't really.
I liked the device of using the newspaper. It was very much off the genre.
Yeah, almost like a physical version of the spinning newspaper that comes to in an animated series or superhero series. Yeah,
without a doubt. So we head over to the jail cell, where through an inner monologue and with a grin on his face, Sam notes the year, and that at this point, as you said, the Dodgers are still in Brooklyn.
Yes, he's a PI called Nick Allen. Where he's got all this information from is not entirely clear.
Yeah, that is quite confusing, unless we assume that
it's a post-dated narrative.
Yeah, or the cops have talked to him.
He's just picked it up from what they're saying. Yeah, it's basically an exposition dump. He's doing here. He's filling us in on all the background we need to know. The body in the office was his partner, Phil Grimsley.
Yeah, he's also sharing a cell with a drunk.
Yes, and despite knowing that he's Nick Allen, he looks in the mirror and thinks he's Humphrey Bogart.
Yeah, now my immediate reaction was, this must be the only jail cell in the world that has a proper mirror.
Insane. People would just smash it and use it as weapons.
Yeah, there'd be suicides and murders and attempted murders all over the place. You can't have a mirror in that type of environment.
Madness. Unless it's just a very shiny piece of metal that looked like a mirror.
It was definitely a mirror, but I think in real prisons they actually do have its reflective material which isn't actually glass.
Yeah.
And as you say, yeah, so he looks in, he sees a Bogart-like tough guy looking back at him.
Yes, and at this moment Al arrives with a appropriate quote.
What's that?
He goes with "Play it again, Sam," and assures him that he's not Bogart, because Bogart at that point is on Long Island with Audrey Hepburn making Sabrina.
Sam struggles with the lingo, and to Al's frustration doesn't remember that a PI is also called a gumshoe. That seems a bit odd that he wouldn't know that. It's not.
Well, he has got memory problems.
That's true, yeah. But he's more interested in practicing his impersonation.
And as we heard at the top of the show, not always getting them spot on.
No. But for once, it's Al who wants to get down to the serious business at hand, and explains that they're probably there. Why?
To find the real killer.
Yes.
And as Al is about to leave to see a friend of Tina's about a horse, as he claims, Sam suddenly has a strange premonition.
What's that?
He says a bald detective is about to come through and tell him that the bullet which killed his partner didn't come from his gun, and that he'll therefore be released.
Sure enough,
that's what happens.
Comes to pass. Sam exits, but not before drawing puzzled looks from the cops as he says goodbye to Al.
Indeed. Who also leaves, and we hear the drunken cellmate singing away in the background.
Yeah.
We then go to an office building, I presume the office building where Sam's agency works from.
Yes, we're in the foyer. And with another monologue which concedes that the cops may have a point. I think that's when they heard him speaking, they suggested that he may have taken a shot or two too many to the head.
Indeed.
In his career.
An old woman approaches him thinking that he is in fact Humphrey Bogart. And when he confirms that he is not in fact Humphrey Bogart, he is struck violently as she passes.
Yeah.
It's an overreaction.
It's also got this feeling of deja vu again.
Well, he does. He thinks he knows who these three people he sees in front of him are going to be.
Mm-hmm. I should say that the building he's in is fantastic and historic and quite well known. Do you have trivia for this?
Not for the building.
No. Will we leave that till the end, or do you want me to drop it in now?
You can fill that in. He refers to it as Gotham Towers, is that right? Is that the name?
It's the Bradbury building in LA.
I might have trivia on this.
Well, I'll give you the trivia I've got for it anyway. Appropriately, it was the filming location for shows and movies such as Marlowe, Chinatown, City of Angels, Dead on Arrival, Bosch, and Pushing Up Daisies. It also was the home of Blade Runner, Murphy's Law, Lethal Weapon 4, Murder in the First, and Ironside.
Well, there you go. And it's in LA, even though the episode's set in New York.
Yeah.
That's the trivia that I had.
Okay, sure. But yeah, I recognise it straight away. I've seen it in many, many movies and shows.
It's quite it's a familiar sort of plaza layout, isn't it?
Yeah.
So these three people that Sam recognises are the building supervisor or the landlord called Lionel.
Yes.
Chuck, who operates the lift, and Seymour from the episode title, who runs a wee newsstand.
Yeah, he works in publishing.
Apparently. They sympathise with him about Phil's death, and Seymour tells him that the word on the street is he was fogged by a dropper named Clapper.
Now, let's decide just now, I've not taken notes of all this lingo that Seymour spouts, have you?
Not all of it, just this one.
Okay.
Because a lot of it's garbage.
It is. It's fun, but I'm not trying to take this down.
No. Sam isn't even sure what he means by this, but do you know what a dropper is?
Is a dropper a hitman?
That's possible. Yeah, because they drop people.
Yeah.
That would make sense.
I think so.
Yeah, but I've not heard it used before.
No, it's off that time.
Fogged, I've heard.
Yeah.
Clapper's not a common name.
No, I must admit, I remember this episode from watching it as a kid, and even back then, it stuck out. Clapper sounds like that's a description of a job or a criminal activity.
Yeah, it's almost just in there for the rhythm.
Yes, I don't like it as a name.
No.
Because I can never remember if it was Clapper or the Clapper.
Yeah, and I don't think it's even, it turns out not to be anybody.
No.
Anyhow, Seymour reckons Sam's going to crack this case like Tommy Trueblood, who took on the cops and the criminals to solve his partner's murder. Is Tommy Trueblood real or fictional?
Not sure.
Because he was looking at a newspaper, wasn't he? So maybe it's meant to be a real person.
Might have been. See, back in the day, they had a lot of these pulp novels. They were churned out.
Yeah. Sam then stuns Seymour.
Yes, how?
By paying for his newspaper.
For the first time. And as he goes to leave, Seymour drops his glasses on the floor, and the other two bet on how long it will take him to fix them. Obviously, this is a recurring event.
Sit and laugh at him. The implication is that Nick would participate in this sort of bet, but Sam doesn't.
No, he again surprises them by helping rather than taking a piece of the action. And this is another example of Sam not being able to take on the persona, the characteristics of the person that he's leaping into. Now, you could argue that obviously he doesn't know how this person would act, but I think
it's heavily implied by the...
It is.
Yeah. But he chooses not to. And you can see from their faces that the other two, Chuck and Lionel, aren't impressed.
He then rides up to his floor with Chuck, who crassly asks Sam if he can ask Philip's new widow if she wants to go to a Dodgers game. But he retreats in shame when Sam gives him an understandable look of incredulity.
It's a withering look, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
why would you even suggest this?
Literally, the day after, or the
morning after the guy's been murdered.
Yeah. Do you think she might want to go on a date with me? No, she won't.
Certainly not tonight.
Even if they were, split up or didn't like each other,
Other things to think about.
yeah, still someone you know has been murdered. Inside the office.
Yes, he gets this deja vu feeling once again.
And it's accompanied by a typical Private Eye noir score, which I really enjoyed. And he, as you say, he has this similar feeling and senses that someone dangerous is with him.
Boy, was I right.
Oh, Nick. It's so horrible. When I found out the police thought you killed Phil,
Allison.
I was so afraid they'd find out about us.
Oh, boy.
I mean, it would be motive for you to kill Phil, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But you didn't.
No.
Nick, I'm so glad. I don't know if I could love a man who killed my husband. But if you didn't do it, who did?
Phil ever mentioned someone called Clapper?
The dropper?
You know him?
No. One night in bed. We slept in twin beds.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, one night Phil was having this nightmare, mumbling something about a dropper named Clapper. Is he the murderer?
Could be.
Oh, Nick, I'm so scared. I can't go back to my apartment. I just can't.
Don't you have somewhere else to stay?
Well, what about your place?
My place?
Well, I know it's a little sudden. Maybe in bad taste. But Philip's dead. And we've been waiting so long.
Waiting? You mean we never... No, of course we never. And Philip was your husband.
And your partner.
Yeah.
And a man can't.
With his partner's wife.
Until his partner is gone.
Maybe we need to be fair to Chuck. He obviously is into a bit of...
Yeah, he must have sensed this. I thought watching this that they're trying to imply that she is potentially involved in this killing, but they don't wait too long before saying it out loud anyway. So it's...
But it's also interesting that our first question or our first reaction was to inquire as to whether Sam was a killer.
Yeah.
Which suggests that she wasn't.
Well, unless she was, and she was trying to
pretend.
Put him off the scent. Yeah.
Yeah. Just thinking there as well, maybe a dropper. Could be a hitman, but maybe it's just someone who drops off, takes money from illegal activities and drops it off to, the boss or whatever.
Or yeah, it could just be the guy at the end of the chain. He does. He does drops. Yeah. He's married. I don't know.
Because it's just when she said that there, do you think the dropper could be the killer? And if that was a hitman, it's a weird question. Do you think the hitman could be the killer? Well, yeah, in the job description.
Yeah.
Anyway,
can't commit.
At the end of the clip there, they kiss and she takes his apartment keys and leaves before he looks up and whispers, "Thank you." And is that to Ziggy or is that to his God?
Just out to the ether. Yeah. He's offering thanks for her interest in him. So he's got no qualms over the fact that she was only very recently bereaved.
No, again, I've got issues with Sam here. And maybe it'll just be his character, but he seems to fall for women so quickly and so hard. It's nauseating, actually. It's like, Sam,
you were in love literally 15 minutes ago with a little girl.
Yeah. Every episode you're in you're falling in love within seconds of meeting these people. Stop it. Like, seriously.
It's not very professional.
It's not professional. It's a bit creepy, I'll be honest. It's not a nice character. He's just so needy and I don't know.
Yeah.
And bearing in mind that we're led to believe, and there's maybe a bigger arc here, that he has this one true love of his, Donna Elise, Terry Hatcher, but she never really gets consideration.
Yeah, he's obviously cottoned on to the fact that no one's going to consider it cheating if he does this, so he's going to get away with it.
But I would have more respect then. Just do it. Be more like Al. But you're always trying to pretend,
even in this episode, he's chastising Al for his sex stories and stuff like that.
Although in this episode, as we come to see, it's Al that's saying, "Oh, come on, Sam.
Yeah,
Remember why we're here. Stop this nonsense.
Well, exactly.
And if Al is telling you to rein it in a bit, you should start to worry.
Well, of course.
In fairness, but I don't think it is. Like, Al's all about the sex. But Sam, I think, falls for these people. He actually loves them. Al would just...
This is at least the third.
Al would just do it for the sake of it because it'd be fun. But I think but Sam, for some reason, gets emotionally attached.
Yeah, despite knowing he's going to have to leave.
Yeah, but for no reason. It's within. He's only just met her.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's fully committed.
Uh-huh.
Once she goes, we solve the Deja Vu issue.
How?
He opens a drawer and finds that he's been writing a book about these events, which rings a bell for him. Or sets a marble rolling, at least. He concludes that he's read this novel in the future.
Yeah, it actually refers to a dropper named Clapper.
And that's it.
A little later, still in the office, Al has arrived and Sam is explaining to him why he knows so much. And as he reads more of it, it's obvious that Nick and Alison loved each other, and he thinks that he has to find the killer so that they can live happily ever after.
That's not quite how he puts it though, is it?
No.
He says, so we can live happily ever
Yes.
after.
That's what I'm saying. It's a bit creepy.
And Al has to say, hang on, it's not you, it's Nick.
And apparently they use the real names, Alison and Nick.
Well, I've not come across any books like this, but Al suggests that this was literally a real unsolved crime, and you could go to the police, having read about it, if you've got any theories, and if they solved the crime, you got money.
Yes, but this is his partner writing this.
Yeah.
So it can't be about them.
Well, he starts out being about the death of his partner. Somebody else must pick it up.
Right, yeah, okay.
Later on. And I think it turns out it's not his version that he's read anyway.
Sure.
Anyhow, Al points out at this stage that Alison could well be the killer because someone has to hire a dropper or could be hiring a dropper.
And he sheepishly and, against his own desires, acknowledges that this could be the case.
Barely acknowledges it though. He's quite steadfastly against the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells Al to find the book so they can check the ending. But Al's got a good point to make, that it won't be a happy ever after. Because if it was, why would he be here?
Yeah. There's also a funny line there where Sam tries to offer up an alternative and says it could be the clapper. And Al says, be careful, Sam, there wasn't a cure for that in 1953 or whenever.
Oh, yeah, he says, we've got the clapper.
Yeah.
That's what he says. Sam resolves, once Al's left, to make sure that Nick and Alison end up together. Which seems a bit premature.
Yeah, this is after Al leaves, is it?
Yeah.
Like, Sam concedes that he might be right and that they didn't end up together, but he's going to change that. Oh,
yeah.
No, don't change that.
You don't know.
Stop trying to change history for your own benefit here.
Based on what, 5 minutes with this woman?
Yeah. Did we mention the title of this manuscript?
No.
It's quite cringy. Dead Men Don't Die.
That's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow. He takes a hat and a coat on his way out and is approached by Seymour.
Yeah, he enjoys himself putting on the trench coat and the fedora.
Yeah, I think he tries on the wrong hat first. He tries on Phil's hat and then makes
Yeah.
his own one. And feels like he's really the part at this stage. Yeah.
Without a doubt, yeah. He's enjoying this. Is a sort of, for him as a kid in the 50s.
Yeah.
These guys would have been the stuff that you read about, your heroes and people on TV and what have you, and the radio back then. He's living this fantasy out. Yeah, so we're now out on the landing. He's approached by an eager Seymour who tells him that he has a lead from a kid in his orphanage who works there, and the clapper will be at the Blue Island that night.
Presumably that's a club of some kind.
Yeah, we see it's a lounge bar back in the day.
Sam remembers reading about that in the novel and says that Phil told him to cover up for that.
They don't, however, know what he looks like. So Seymour takes inspiration from another book and suggests going as the mafia and pretend to be looking to hire him. That's not a good idea.
No, and Sam quite rightly points out he can't because the police have his gun.
Yeah, and as he turns at this point, he falls into the elevator shaft, saved only by grabbing onto the cable.
Yes, he has to scramble to safety, and Seymour looks like he's unconscious on the floor. What was that all about?
Someone's knocked him out.
Oh, have they?
Yes.
That doesn't really get mentioned.
It doesn't. I think that's what you're meant to assume. How else would he be?
I don't know whether he's fainted out of shock.
Yeah, no, I think he's been knocked out. But I think what they're hinting at is that maybe he's pretending to have been knocked out because he may have been the fact that he pushed him. Down in the foyer, as Chuck and Lionel argue over whose fault it was that the elevator opened, Sam walks off and disagrees with Seymour that Clapper was responsible, as pros apparently rarely fail. I'm not sure about. Not sure about that.
But he also quite rightly points out that Clapper wouldn't know who would be next to use the elevator, or that they would likely step into it without looking.
Yeah, Seymour, he blames himself for distracting him and says that he always causes accidents, and maybe that is why he was dumped in an orphanage. He's really trying to push the emotional buttons. And then he goes on to explain that he grew up mainly in the library, not reading but sleeping, as no one bothered him in there.
Seymour then tells Sam that he idolises him, but Sam says he's a 2-bit detective specialising in divorces, and it's really nothing to look up to.
However, our femme fatale doesn't agree with Sam's description either, as she enters smoking and causing a double, oh boy.
A double take, yeah. Yes, Seymour says he's Nick Allen and he's the best, and she concurs.
Before going on to apologise for looking good in black, obviously funeral attire or mourning attire, and then warns Sam against going to the Blue Island, as it was there where Phil was the night that he got killed.
Ooh. Sam wants to know why she never told him this before.
And there's an awkward moment when she reminds him, well, I didn't need to because you were there.
Seymour explains about the lift shaft incident, which might have shaken Sam up a little bit.
And Alison opines that the killer is now after him and pleads with him not to go to the Blue Island, but he says he has to, and to find the killer.
Yes, Seymour says Clapper's a pro who knows the code, and he'll know that Nick won't rest until he catches him.
What's your thoughts on Seymour?
He's a puppy.
Yeah.
Isn't he? Just kind of... He literally just idolises Nick, wants to be like him and doesn't know how to do it.
Type of person that would be quite... it would stroke your ego for a day or so, but if this was constant, you would really start to...
Really quickly,
You could just use him for errands and things.
Yeah, keep him entertained. And the problem is if he ends up getting killed, then you feel really bad about it.
Yeah, well, maybe. Go and get my coffee. So we find ourselves at the Blue Island nightclub.
Yeah, we do. Obviously, a wee bit of a time skip. Sam is now wearing a white suit and dances with Alison.
Yes, to a Blue Moon, with Seymour watching like a third wheel.
In a voiceover, we hear Sam going through 2 theories about why Alison has insisted on coming.
What are they?
Firstly, she's hired Clapper to kill Phil and wanted to make sure that Sam doesn't find him.
Or
she really loves Sam, or Nick, maybe, and is frightened for his safety. He prefers the second option.
Yes, of course he does. He admits it is the latter, he believes, as he rubs up against her, and then is surprised to see Al conducting the band. Yes,
Alison notices attention being drawn by Al and asks if he spotted the killer.
But Sam said it was just an old divorce case client, and she tastelessly says that she's thankful she didn't have to go through it herself.
Before realising what she said and apologising, yes.
Yeah, she didn't mean it in that way.
No. Al appears, though, to have found this book that Sam was talking about, and Alison's convinced that it's Clapper that Sam is looking at.
Yeah, but Sam takes them back to their seats, and when they sit down, Seymour reveals that his contact tells him that Clapper may well be a woman.
Oh.
Well, from that, I mean, there's only one obvious.
Game changer.
So who is this source then?
I don't know. Is there a source? Is he just making it up? Or is the actual killer feeding him information through other people, third parties?
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems weird when we find out who the actual killer is. This doesn't really make any sense whatsoever.
Oh. It could well be that the actual killer is either feeding it to Seymour or staging a conversation nearby where Seymour can hear about it.
Yeah, maybe. But this is his friend in the orphanage, isn't it?
Yeah, or it could just be Seymour's making it up.
Again, that's weird as well.
Why would he do that? Yeah.
Well, I mean,
make himself seem important, I guess.
And he has a sort of he lives in a sort of fantasy world.
Yeah.
Anyway, All this makes Sam uncomfortable, and he leaves them to go and get drinks. So up at the bar, he goes over to speak with Al, who is he's got perving binoculars with him.
Literally.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. He is a hologram. The whole thing about binoculars is so that you can see things when you aren't able to get up close.
He just walk over.
He could walk over and look right down her top or her upper dress if he wanted to, and he probably does.
He certainly does.
Yes. He doesn't need these binoculars.
No, but it gives us a camera view of what he's looking at as well.
Yeah. But unfortunately, things don't get much clearer.
Oh, Sam, wow. Allison is a killer.
Nick wrote that?
Nick? Oh, the book. No, I'm talking about her body. Deadly.
Oh, Al.
She reminds me of this redhead in Billing.
Al, so help me. If you start with one of your sleazy sex stories, hologram or no hologram, I'll slug you.
Sleazy?
Sleazy.
Well, Sam, you know there's sleaze and there's sleaze. Please.
Who killed Phil?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know? You got the book. I saw you.
Yeah, but, it's an unfinished mystery. It's one of those contest books they had in the 50s. You figure out who did the murder, and if the cops can prove it, then you win 10 grand.
Al, it says who killed Grimsley and Alan.
Yeah, I thought you'd notice that last part.
Al goes on to explain that Allison and Seymour disappear on the night of Nick's murder, which happens to be tonight at LaGuardia. However, Al thinks it's a stretch of the imagination to think that Allison and Seymour are acting together.
Yeah, I mean, we see as they're talking, we look over at the table where Seymour is pathetically trying to impress the obviously disinterested Allison with tales of Tommy Trueblood. And also, is this the point where Al thinks it's outrageous that the drinks cost $3?
Yes, because you get it for $1.25 in a bar in town, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure he understands how these things work. It's not like...
You're in a fancy club, yeah. It costs more.
It's not...
It's part of the process. It's not the first time in this series that they've been quite judgmental about who women would be attracted to. They seem to think that everyone's as superficial as Al is.
Yeah, but I'm with no one is fancying Seymour. He's an irritating little...
He's got his charms.
Yeah, for a 18-year-old girl, maybe.
I'm not sure.
Another bookworm.
I'm not sure Alison's his type. I don't think he could handle Allison from what we've
Allison has shown she's into these tough guy types, not Seymour.
But maybe she's put on an act.
And she really likes
Seymour,
nerdy geeks. Okay.
Anyhow, Al is convinced that Allison is Clapper. He thinks that she has Sam tied in knots. But this leads to a bit of a reaction.
Explain.
Sam lashes out at Al, saying that he got married 5 times and his judgment is clouded by his constant drinking, which quite really offends Al. He advises Sam to avoid LaGuardia and leaves.
Yeah, Sam was a total dick.
Yeah, it's because he doesn't like what he's hearing.
No.
It's not the first time.
It's not the first time, no.
Anyhow, he very quickly realises that he was wrong and Al was right, and that we hurt people for telling us the truth. Well, too late now.
Yeah, he admits that he was right about his blindness to Allison, and then shakes his head when he realises that he is thinking in Seymour lingo.
Yes. He then takes his drinks and crosses the dance floor where the lights turn to him and they play as time goes by.
Outside, all 3 of them leave as the weather turns, and Seymour runs to get a cab. And at this point, Sam acts a bit like a jealous schoolboy and asks her if she really loved Phil. It's her husband.
Yeah, and he says it's the kind of question that has to be asked. It's not really.
No, it's not. She claims that she was young and loved the notion of the older, more sophisticated man, but that Sam is the only man that she ever fell for.
Yeah, she only loved the idea of Phil.
Yeah. See,
Right.
I just don't like Sam. Is just, yeah.
Yeah, so Nick's the actual embodiment of this ideal that she's, or the idea.
This is obviously what he wanted to hear, and they kiss passionately before they realise that the cab is still not there. So Sam walks off to get one, but what happens?
He comes under fire. I think a bullet grazes his cheek.
Yeah, a bit of a flesh wound from a man wearing a hat and coat who runs off into an alley.
He manages to scramble back to the doorway where Alison's waiting.
And rather than getting out of there because there's been an attempted murder, he decides that kissing again is what's required.
You know, emotions are high.
He can't control himself.
It's a high stakes situation. Blood is pumping.
That turns him on. Death, murder. That's the thing.
So yeah, they kiss again, and Seymour now shows up in a cab.
Yes.
So that's suspicious.
Very suspicious. They get in, but Sam is not in the mood for him getting his geek on.
Nick, you're creased.
Somebody shot at us.
Clapper? Gotham Towers. What took you so long, Seymour?
The canaries were harder to find than a hooker on Sunday morning.
Plenty of canaries. Plenty of cabs from what I could see.
When I finally got one, this hard Harry with a kisser that could break a mirror in the next apartment stepped on my daisy crushers.
Stop it. No one can be as nerdy as you're acting.
Nerdy?
Wimpy, wussy, dopey, goofy.
You don't mean that, Nick.
Every word of it. Look, you've been throwing me closer than my underwear and it's getting boring.
Take it easy,
Look, he's got to find out sometime that he's not going to be Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe, or Thomas Magnum.
Magnum.
I don't want to be like those guys. I just want to be like you.
Me? Kid. If I'm lucky, I'm going to spend the rest of my life leaping around from one place to another instead of face down in a pool of blood.
Don't do this, Nick.
It's done. From now on, you find some other Seamus to pester. I'll be right back.
Nick's just tired and hurt. He didn't mean it, Seymour.
I think he did.
Did you like the reference to Magnum there?
I think that's a inside joke, isn't it?
Yeah. At this point, I'm not sure if you remember from watching it the first time round. Who did you suspect the killer to be? Were you going for Seymour? That's the obvious one, I think.
Seymour and Alice have both got suspicion hanging over them, but then that conversation between them, I think, takes Alison off maybe a little bit. It certainly takes away the idea that they're working together.
Sure. In the office, Sam...
I don't understand this, but you have to explain this to me. He's just, a couple of hours ago, told Seymour, we can't take a gun, the police have my gun.
He was lying to Seymour a couple of hours ago. He didn't want Seymour to be messing about with guns, quite rightly, because he thought he was some sort of Dick Tracy.
Why didn't he not take the gun in the first place?
He didn't think he necessarily needed it, but now he's been shot at.
Okay.
So he's now a bit worried at it. I think that's reasonable.
Okay. So he does, as we say, get a gun, and on his way out, he takes Phil's coat and hat.
Yes.
What do you think his plan is for that?
Don't know.
Okay.
No, I'm thinking, this will be a clue here. This is a typical Columbo type situation where you go, this is the eureka moment normally.
Yeah.
Because earlier on as well, if you remember, I thought there'd be more made of the fact that the hat didn't fit.
Right, but no.
No, that type of thing, but not
And
really.
he's completely dropped the whole premonition thing.
Yeah.
We see outside a second cab pull up behind the one with Alison in it, and we quickly move back indoors where Sam passes Seymour in the lobby.
Yeah, he ignores his upset little puppy at his newsstand until he drops his glasses again, and after deliberating turns to help him.
He can't walk away.
No, he apologises.
He's hurt one friend already and he can't do it a second time. He calls him a neat kid and a good friend, someone he can count on, but he doesn't want him to tag along.
And he then explains that he's going after Clapper and he doesn't want him to get hurt.
Well, no, Seymour intuits that you don't want me to get hurt. That he kind of hints at that so that Seymour comes to the conclusion.
Yeah, this
himself.
Yeah, this perks him up, and he asks who the Clapper is. Sam admits he doesn't know, but was suspicious of him for a while, considering the elevator incident and that he was around when he got shot just a few moments earlier.
But he's ruled him out.
Yeah, but I think, firstly, Seymour smells at this. Now, the fact that he could be considered to be a dropper.
Yeah.
And Sam says he realised that it wasn't him in the cab, as he was dry, and that the Clapper was obviously soaked because he was standing out in the rain.
Yeah.
However, Sam says he knows where he is and he's going after him.
Seymour says that after what Sam said to him, he owes him the chance to come along.
Yeah, he begs to be allowed to trot along behind him.
Sam gives him two conditions.
What are they?
Firstly, you listen to what I say and do what I tell you.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, go and get a raincoat.
So, Seymour runs off to do so.
Sam tries to leave.
Yes. That was obviously his plan, to get rid of him, to keep him out of harm's way.
We then see Alison in the cab, and someone gets in beside her, we assume Sam, and she says, I thought you'd never get there, or to get here, and they drive off. But it's not Sam. We see him now emerge from the building as the taxi leaves.
Yeah, he stands dejected and getting soaked as the eager Seymour has now caught up and stands beside him, not knowing that he was meant to be getting ditched.
So I think we're meant to assume Alison is working with somebody else.
Yeah, but so she was waiting for Sam.
Well, does she think it's Sam, or does she know who it is? So if she knows who's getting in the cab and she was waiting for them, she's working with them.
Yeah.
But if she thought it was Sam...
But how would you not know it was who the person...
Well, she doesn't... We don't see her look up, but yeah.
So odd, doesn't it?
So the implication here is, yes, she's working with whoever the real killer is.
Yeah. In the back of another cab now, Sam is equally happy and depressed to have understood what Seymour said.
Yes, all the lingo. Al shows up and via a conversation with Seymour, Sam is able to apologise to him.
Yeah, how does he do that?
Well, he talks to Seymour about how he was, or how he hurt another friend earlier in the evening, and how he feels bad about it. And
his real good friend. But Al cannot believe that Sam is going to where he told him not to go, like LaGuardia.
This is kind of a paradox.
Why?
Because it's in the book that he goes to LaGuardia and gets killed, but he wouldn't be going to LaGuardia if Al hadn't told him it was in the book.
Yeah, it's true. It's all Al's fault.
Well, maybe they found another way to find out where Alison was headed, or followed the cab or something.
Yeah.
Anyhow.
Outside the airport, Sam leaves the cab and Al warns him again that it is really dangerous.
And Sam warns Seymour that Alison may be the bad guy and to keep his eyes open.
Yeah, they're going to split up to look for her.
Of course, yeah, Sam doesn't know anyone else was in the cab with her. He might have thought that she's gone off alone.
Ah. Yeah, I mean, Seymour doesn't want to believe that Alison could be the killer, but agrees to let him know as soon as he eyeballs his main squeeze.
This is a phrase that Sam has come up with that Seymour's not familiar with, but he likes it.
Yeah, and Al is puzzled as to how the term has travelled from Seymour to apparently black slang in 20 years, so this must be a slang term.
Anyhow, they head indoors.
Yes, where Sam confirms he's carrying a gun, but admits that he probably wouldn't use it on Alison, as Al takes one for the team and goes to the ladies' toilets to check who's there.
There's nothing wrong with him. Sam doesn't get very far.
No, he is immediately approached by a bespectacled young boy who thinks he's bogey, and this distraction happens just as Seymour is surprised by who?
Lionel.
Ah.
Where'd he come from? He accosts Seymour at gunpoint. Is he working with Alison?
We'll find out.
Oh.
What he does do is lead him to the runway or the tarmac.
Yeah, Sam sees them, and obviously there's no security back in 1953.
No, he breaks free from the now crowd that's gathered round him and the young neurotic Woody Allen, and runs after them.
He has to dodge a couple of bullets and pursues them into a hangar.
Yeah, and now manic Lionel shouts that he doesn't want to kill him or Seymour, and that he's doing this because he and Alison want to be together, and she doesn't love him and never loved Phil.
Yes, and that Phil wouldn't drop it, and that's why he had to be killed. But Sam's smarter. He could just let them go. Yeah.
Lionel is only like one step removed from Sam. Sam is almost at that stage where he gets so emotionally attached and loved up so quickly.
Yeah.
That it wouldn't take much.
Believes that, yeah.
No, but I'm saying it wouldn't take much for him to become this sort of obsessive stalker or killer type who thinks that,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Al, he appears and wonders how many shots Lionel has fired already, and for some reason Sam tells him to get down.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, it's a hologram. What I'm thinking here is they must drop these things in the producers have to assume that there's going to be new viewers every episode.
Yeah, so they're
re-emphasising the concept. Yeah.
So Al volunteers to go and do a recce, and Lionel lets Seymour go.
Yeah, he's in the cockpit of a plane and he's firing randomly in all directions. So Al shouts instructions to Sam about the best way to get to him, and he gets quite agitated when he runs out of bullets. Sam gets agitated. Al gets agitated, that is, when Lionel runs out of bullets and he's trying to encourage Sam to get there. I think we're meant to think
for a moment, has he been shot? Because he doesn't show up when Al's expecting him to.
Yeah.
But no, there he is. Appears from below the plane.
In a nick of time. but doesn't impress Al with his Edward G. Robinson impersonation as he sticks a gun into Lionel's chest. And then a little bit later, we see him being led off in cuffs as Sam holds Alison as she blames herself for his actions, and they both inexplicably agree to feeling pity.
How could I have turned Lionel on and not realized it? You know, the funny part is I kind of feel sorry for him.
Yeah, me too.
Nick, take me away from this.
My apartment?
Actually, I was thinking of someplace a little farther.
Where'd you get those?
Well, I know some people might think it's a little bizarre, but the poor soul did pay for them.
Where are they to?
Doesn't matter.
A little bit of self-victim blaming there.
Yeah.
I should have turned him on.
Yeah. How could I know that I was turning him on so much?
Yeah.
Humble brag.
Yeah.
Al, at this point, starts looking on disapprovingly and trying to interrupt them with a cough.
Yeah, he's not impressed by this. Another long, lingering kiss. And he tries to remind Sam to hurry up. He tells her to board the plane and they'll join her in a minute. And then she seductively tells him not to be long as it's a
Sleeper flight.
Oh, won't be doing much sleeping, I don't think.
Well, apparently not. Al, though, tells Sam not to get on the plane or that he's not going to do it.
Yeah, dismisses Sam's Casablanca quote, and he tells him he has seen the picture.
Well, Sam says that's good because he'll know how it ends.
Yeah, but that's not good because the ending of it is that he doesn't go on, he leaves her to go alone. Bogart doesn't go on the plane.
No. So Al tells Sam he doesn't think he can get on the flight, and Seymour shows up.
Yes, he shouts on Sam and details how Lionel tried to choke him to death. And Sam reminds him that this is what Seymour always wanted, apparently. The chance for some real action.
I don't think he was that impressed once he was part of it, though, and Sam suggests that maybe he should write about it instead.
Ah. He smiles, grins, as he considers this, before Alison shouts over for Sam to hurry. And all three respond with a...
There's no boy.
Yep.
And Al points out to Sam he's only come here to launch a pulp novelist, and then mentions that it's the start of a beautiful friendship. Sam tells him that he couldn't resist that, could he? And leaps into a bath.
Yeah, and I'm sure you've got a little bit of trivia about the destination of the leap.
Well, we'll get to that.
Okay. So, thoughts on this episode?
I enjoyed it. Do you think Nick got on the plane after Sam leaps?
No.
No?
No.
You don't think there's a happy ending?
Well, maybe there's a happy ending. Doesn't mean to say he has to get onto the plane.
But why would he not? It's just a holiday.
Is it?
Well, maybe not. Maybe it's a one-way ticket.
Could be. I think that was the thing. If he was killing people to get to her, he's not going to buy a return ticket.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's probably down to Mexico, I'd have thought, something like that.
So he's going to let her go and get back to his work.
Maybe. And she might return, and they could meet up at a later date.
Yeah, maybe.
But at that point, she'll be raging.
What happened? Why did you get the plane?
I was there myself. It's terrible.
Oh, I had to help Seymour.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of that as well, we see Seymour. He trots off practicing his dialogue, his
yes, his phrases,
his lingo. Yeah.
How early in the episode did you realise it was Lionel?
I didn't.
When he showed up in the airport with the gun? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of these. Again, it's fairly typical of things like the Maltese Falcon are sometimes criticised, but certainly renowned for people not being able to, viewers or readers not being able to work out from the information given who the killer would be or what the plot is. Same with a lot of Agatha Christie. She tends to drop in people and you go, "Oh, but a second, I couldn't have possibly known that."
It's not fair.
I love the whole genre, and I love the takes, the homages to the genre.
Yeah.
And we mentioned earlier on there, Sledgehammer, there was a Sledge episode, Play It Again, Sledge.
They're not very imaginative with their titles.
They're not, but they're all a play on Play It Again. I just enjoy it. It's fun.
Yeah, it's
Entertaining.
good. Comfortable pair of slippers.
Yeah, and I'm also a big fan of like Woody Allen as well, so that was good. Go on.
You don't think he's an evil villain?
Nope.
Let's not get into this.
You know my views on Woody Allen. I think he's wrongly disparaged, and anyone who looks into it above the headlines would.
I'm sure you support Johnny Depp as well.
Actually, yeah, I do support Johnny Depp on this one, but
we should probably move on.
We'll move on. No, but Woody Allen, do a little bit of there's nothing to it at all, and that's why he's
do your research.
That's just why he's
learned everything you know from YouTube.
No, that's why he's a free man and has never been convicted of anything because he didn't.
And Kubrick, they're the ones that you like.
But he didn't. Kubrick.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about Kubrick.
No, I don't know.
No, I think he's fine.
Yeah, they're probably all fine.
Yeah. No, Woody Allen is fine because he was investigated and there was no wrongdoing whatsoever. An awful lot of misconceptions about misconceptions about what went on here, and words get bandied about, and it's just not accurate at all. Woody Allen's a genius and not in any way.
R. Kelly, you like him?
I don't like R. Kelly. I never liked R. Kelly before that anyway. I thought he was atrocious. I'm not a fan of R. Kelly now.
Glitter? How do you feel like Glitter?
I wouldn't be in his gang, let me put it that way.
Okay. Trivia?
Yeah, sure. We'll move on from supporting of you trying to suggest a
list of international criminals that year.
Go for it.
Original air date was the 17th of May 1989. Directed by Aaron Lipstad. We've already talked about him. So you can go back to the podcast for Double Identity to hear more about him. This was the second of his 3 episodes. Scott Shepherd wrote the teleplay along with Donald Belisario from a story that the two of them get credited for, along with Tom Blomqvist. This was the first of 3 writing credits on the show for Shepherd, and it's Blomqvist's only involvement. Shepherd also wrote for shows like Murder, She Wrote, The Equalizer, Miami Vice and The Outer Limits, and Blomqvist wrote for The A-Team, Riptide, Swamp Thing and Farscape, and he's a professor emeritus in the Film and Electronic Arts faculty at Cal State.
Very good. This is annoying me. I have to point out, right, Woody Allen, okay, here's the thing. The tabloids and the headlines make it look as if he ended up marrying and was abusing some sort of child that he brought up. He didn't. He met, he never ever lived, his wife, who he's been with now for 20, 30 years and she stands by him, was an adult. He never lived with her. He didn't bring her up as his own kid. It was Mia Farrow's adopted child who he never lived with.
You seem quite agitated.
Because people think it's like, oh, he married his own daughter. No, he didn't. He never lived and brought up this girl as his daughter. He was, at one point,
technically legal.
At one point going out with her mother, but that was it. She was like 19 at the time, and she's still with him all these years later. And anyway, that's
okay. You calm now?
No, I'm not, because he was also, I read his autobiography, and it goes into obviously in great detail, where he opened up to the top FBI sex crimes unit, and he says, yeah, go for it. They investigated everything and detail saying there's absolutely nothing here. There's no wrongdoing can be found whatsoever.
Okay.
Anyway, Mia Farrow's a banger as well. Anyway.
Claudia Christian, speaking of, played Alison Grimsley. This was her only Quantum Leap appearance. She's best known for her role on Babylon 5, but she's also been on shows like Murder, She Wrote, T.J. Hooker, L.A. Law, Criminal Minds, and one episode of Columbo,
yes,
where she starred alongside Faye Dunaway as suspects, and It's All in the Game. She's more recently lent her voice to a series of high-profile video games, including Halo, Guild Wars, World of Warcraft, and Diablo. She's now 56, still performing.
I mentioned before as well a few times that she was in The Hidden, a good B movie from the 80s.
Willie Garson played Seymour Butt. I'm going to save his bio for his return to the show.
Seymour Butt? That's a Simpsons joke.
He's going to return in another interesting role later in the series, so I'm going to wait and do him then. He died recently, sadly, but we'll get more information in the future. Paul Link played Lionel. This was the first of 2 appearances on the show. He'd previously appeared in shows like Hooperman, Chips, MASH, The Waltons and Happy Days, And he would go on to appear in Parenthood, Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, The New Adventure of Superman, Baywatch, and Murder, She Wrote, amongst many others. He's now 74, and his last screen credit was in 2018, so I guess we can say still active. Richard Reel, this is an interesting one.
I know him from a lot of shows.
Yeah, so he was briefly in as the officer that let Sam out of prison. He played Lieutenant Lannon.
Mm-hmm.
He's a famous face. This is the first of 2 appearances on the show, but he's also appeared in things like The Golden Girls, Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Voyager, Star Trek Enterprise, Murder, She Wrote, Boston Legal, and Modern Family, as well as films like Free Willy, Casino, Juice Bigelow, Male Gigolo, not to mention 2 episodes of Columbo.
Okay, remind me.
Sergeant DeGarmo in both of them.
Mm-hmm.
Ashes to Ashes, and then A Murder with Too Many Notes opposite Billy Connolly.
Try to forget that one.
So he's now 74, still performing. Jeanette Miller, you won't remember her. She was the old lady who was disappointed that Sam wasn't Humphrey Bogart and hit him. This was her only Quantum Leap role. I find her quite interesting because she's one of these actors who didn't have a career until she became an old lady and then played old lady in lots of... There seems to be a set of these people.
As I explained the other week there, I've still got ambitions.
Yes. She's been in things like Murphy Brown, Star Trek Voyager, Seinfeld, The Truman Show, Friends, Dexter, Scrubs, The Middle, and ER, amongst loads of others. And our most recent screen credit was in 2012. Kevin Mockrun played the young Woody Allen. He didn't have much of a screen career, but he's gone to be a casting director, working on major films and shows like Mission Impossible, Ghost Protocol, Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End, Desperate Housewives, Cougar Town, and Workaholics, and he's now 46 years old. In trivia, we've talked about the Bradbury Building, we've talked about the Brooklyn Dodgers. They moved in 1958 to LA. Woody Allen would have actually been 17 in 1953. Dating a 5-year-old probably. And the actor in this is only 12. In terms of things we learned, so lifetime that Sam can leap within apparently includes the time he was in utero, because this is before his birth.
Yep.
And I think there was something else about Al being divorced 5 times.
Yes. And also that Sam is quite a clingy, emotional, creepy, borderline...
We've already got that impression. It's reinforced here, isn't it? So, in terms of next episode, as we've said at the top, we're going to take a break now between seasons. But when we return, the next show is not picking up where this one left off in the bath, but rather with an episode called Honeymoon Express, set in 1960, where Sam has orders to carry out. Also,
apparently in the UK on the original run, the first 2 episodes of the second season were included in the first season. I think obviously we'd be about a year behind. That would be
confusing if it ran straight on from this leap to something completely different.
Yeah.
But we'll try and resolve it all when we get into season 2, and we will see you shortly.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye bye.